What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to Hawk Talk on Melrose. I am Colin, joined with Tyler, as always, recording this on Sunday, January 7th. We thought, wouldn't it be a bad idea to bring out another episode? Our last one was 4 or 5 days ago, but a lot of happened between those days. Cooper Dejean deciding to leave. I wish he was coming back. Thompson situation, Sebastion Castro. So we just thought we'd kick one off. Really short episode. But before we get into that, I do want to say thank you to all who listened to our last episode, because it was our best episode yet in terms of viewership on YouTube and then also on other streaming platforms. And like I said, I want to thank each and every one of you guys. Obviously, when I started this podcast out back in 2018, I really thought it was going to be just like a family and friends. That's about it. Maybe branch out a little bit. And it's still really small, don't get me wrong, but it's way better than I ever imagined. And I want to thank each and every one of you guys. So I'm sure, Tyler, you think the same way. But what's going on, man? How are you doing today?
Yeah, doing good, Colin. Yeah, just kind of like what you said. I just want to reiterate that, obviously very appreciative of all you guys. And, it's good to see that, we do have outside of family and friends, other people that kind of watch us and listen to us and kind of care about what we have to say. And, yeah, this last year, I mean, we've continued to grow slowly but surely. And, it'd be cool to see the pod continue to grow into this next year. So, like you said, yeah, the last episode kind of blew up, especially on YouTube. So yeah, if you guys haven't checked that out, make sure you go do it. Leave a review, like it, subscribe, all that jazz. So, but yeah, man, excited to talk some more college football. Obviously, like you mentioned, some key guys coming back, and then obviously, Cooper did decide to leave, but yeah, we'll get right into it.
And if you're not watching us on YouTube, we are on pretty much every platform. Once again, Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Spotify. Check us out, Hawk Talk on Melrose. So, yes, let's start with Cooper Dejean. I think it was Thursday night, came out that he was leaving. For me, it was no surprise. There was a part of me where I was like praying that he would come back. But I think when it's all said and done, it's the right decision. Obviously, selfishly, I wish he was coming back, but it's the best and right decision. You talk about most college football players will never get to the next level, let alone be a draft pick, and then not only that, but a first rounder potentially. And that's exactly what Cooper Jean is going to be. And when you're looking at the money that he's going to be making, even if the his NFL career, which I don't think this is going to happen, let's just say it ends up not being maybe what everyone kind of expects, he's still going to make a lot of money on his rookie contract. So it's the best decision for him. Now, I'm sure deep down, there was probably a part of him that wanted to come back. He's small town Iowa. He's a legend in Iowa City. And I think, think about like the Coop, if he would have came back
Yeah.
next year, I mean, everybody loves him. Like I said, he's a Hawkeye legend. And there was probably a part of
Yeah.
him that's like, God, like that would be so much fun to run it back home here, on top of like he obviously would have got money. He would have got a really good NIL. But I just think you just can't pass up being a potential first rounder with the amount of money that you might make, like
Yeah.
minimum 15-ish million dollars. So you're set for life at that point. So it's the right decision, I think. It sucks for us because it would be sweet for him back, but I think it's the right decision for him.
Yeah, yeah. Like you said, selfishly, I wish he was coming back. And I guess I was maybe a little more optimistic than you were. You kind of had like a source closer to the situation than I did. And like you said, from everything that you've heard, you didn't feel great about him coming back. Just that they didn't say one way or the other that he was or wasn't coming back. It's just kind of the vibe you were getting from someone that knows his family. And
Yep.
I guess what I saw, I guess the only thing I was holding out hope for was, we had a lot of guys coming back, and like, were they going to get the whole band back together, quote unquote? So
Yeah.
obviously it didn't happen with Cooper, but no, dude, I'm so happy for him. And obviously with the injury again, I think that maybe played a part in it too. It's
It,
like,
yep.
like if he gets injured, if he comes back and gets injured again,
That's
like,
twice now. Yep.
yeah, that's just more medical issues, more red flags, more reasons for teams not to take you. And he's probably guaranteed a first round pick, and you can't You can't blame a guy like that. Not a
No.
guy that's done everything right on and off the field. I mean, go get your money, man. Yeah, it's great. I can't wait to watch him in the NFL. I think he's, like you said, I think he's gonna be a stud. So, I'm obviously super happy for him. A little disappointed he didn't come back for the Hawks, but man, I don't blame him one bit.
I think it was just so quick, right? Like his 3 years at Iowa was so quick, and then it
Yeah,
ended where no one really thought it was going to end, right? Like after the Rutgers game, you never
yeah,
imagined that that's going to be the last time you see Cooper Dejean in a Hawkeye uniform. And I think that's what kind of pains all of us is it
yeah.
just happened so quickly. Like I wish he was able to finish out the year and
Do it the
play in
right,
the Big
finish it
Ten
the right
championship
way.
game, play in the
Yeah,
bowl game, right? Play in the Nebraska game. And
yeah,
I think that's what kind of sucks. But yeah, when you look at it kind of glass half full or whatever you want to say it, it still is a good thing though that we are bringing back 3 out of the top 4 guys that I wanted back. Luke Lachey, Cooper Jean, Sebastion, and then Jay Higgins. If you put those 4 guys, those are kind of like my top 4, and 3 out of the 4 are coming back. That's 75%. That's pretty damn good. I think most
yeah,
people a month ago was probably hoping one of them would come back, like 1 or 2. That's like probably the goal. So to get 3 out of the 4, that's huge. And yesterday, Sebastion Castro announced very Sebastion is probably one of the most underrated, underappreciated players that we have. Obviously, at the moment when he's making big plays, you're like, oh my God, this guy's so good. But then I think a lot of the time we like kind of forget about him. And it's not because
yeah,
he's not good. Like we just kind of forget about him. And it's like, oh my gosh, yeah, this guy is a stud. And he's going to be one of the best defenders next year in college football. And he's that type of guy that if he was in the transfer portal, like he would be like one of the best transfers. So like when you really
yeah,
think about it, if any Iowa fans are like mad that we're not attacking the transfer portal, which I think we need to attack in some areas, but at the same time, like we're almost essentially like bringing these guys back is like getting guys in the transfer portal, and they're better than anybody that we could get in the transfer portal. I mean, who's better than Sebastion Castro and Jay Higgins? So
yeah.
it is huge. And then Luke Lachey coming back is massive too. Now we're still waiting on Nick Jackson, Quinn Schulte. Both of those guys, for me, if let's say both of them end up not coming back, I don't think it's the end of the world. It's not like Jay
Yeah.
Higgins decided not to come back or Sebastion not trying or coming back. I think we can move on. Now, it would be nice to bring back Nick Jackson. I just think it would be cool to see that duo of him and Higgins back. But it's not the
Yeah.
end of the world. We got a lot of really young linebackers that are kind of awaiting their turn, and I think some of them are going to be good. And we have one of the best coaches coaching that position, Seth Wallace. So for me, I'm not too worried about that. And then Quinn Schulte, same way. We got Cohen Entringer in the waiting. So if he decides not to come back, I think we're fine. But
Yeah.
at the same time, though, with me saying that, I still want them back. I mean, you got guys with experience, things like that. But still waiting on them. I'm sure here in the next few days they will announce. But I just think getting 3 out of the 4 of the top 4 guys is massive.
Yeah, and then obviously Jamari Harris. I mean, with Cooper for sure leaving,
Yep.
he's the guy that
Yeah.
really moves up the list quite a bit, in terms of just the need, right? And so he's a guy that I'm excited about. He'll be for sure the main guy come
Yeah.
next year, and I'm excited to see him continue to take on that role as like the number 1 corner for Iowa. And then like you said, real quick, just Sebastion Castro. I mean, it's weird how he goes from kind of like a no-name player, just a good football player to probably, I mean, what some are saying, maybe a preseason or potential All-American that come next year, just from the way that he ended that season, and he's continued to get better and better. And yeah, he'll be all over the field next year. There's no doubt about it. I'm so excited he is back. And then, yep, like you mentioned, Nick Jackson, still waiting on a guy like him. That's kind of the next big get, I think, if you're Iowa. So yeah.
Sebastion like reminds me of these 3 guys that are now in the NFL, but all 3 were not highly recruited. Geno Stone, Amani Hooker, and Dane Bellin. They all kind of play that same position, safety hybrid. And I think he's the next guy that I think is going to be like them in the NFL. The dude's a stud and another very underrated guy. And if you look at like his recruitment out of high school, not very highly recruited. So
Yeah.
just
Well,
another
apparently
Phil Parker special right there.
that position translates well to the
It
NFL because all those
it
guys are doing really well.
yeah
So
yeah
yeah, just a good sign there.
So let's move now. It's kind of a 180, but let's move to the quarterback position a little bit because the other day, I think it was it the same night? No, it was a night before Cooper Jean announced because I remember like that night I was like, oh my God, okay, Cooper Jean might be coming back. And then this Oregon quarterback, Ty Thompson, is going to schedule to make a visit. Now, for me, the way I look at Iowa's perspective, because it makes sense because I think they're thinking just like us, like Cade relying on Cade is not a very good thing. Now, maybe he will stay healthy all of next year, but you're coming off 2 seasons of knee surgery, both knees, not just one, both knees now. Will he be able to last an entire year? Are we going to ride or die on the season because of Cade's health? And that's kind of what we did this year, and it didn't go over well. So I know Iowa's perspective, it's like we better find another quarterback to back him up just in case this happens. And so it made sense for Iowa, but for like Ty Thompson, like the entire time for me, it's like this just doesn't make sense for him because if he was fine being a backup, then he would stay at Oregon. Now he was a backup to Bo Nix. He probably thought he was going to start this next year. They go out and get Dylan Gabriel, but still, like he would have stayed there if he was fine being a backup. If he would have came to Iowa, he would have been a backup to Cade. He would have, unless he would beat him out.
Right.
And I just don't see it happening. Or if Cade gets hurt again, but you can't really rely on that, and nor should you rely on that. You don't want to wish someone's health, right? So it didn't really make much sense for Ty Thompson to come to Iowa, let alone then no OC yet, no quarterbacks coach. So it was honestly like to me, like it would be cool, but I don't know. I just didn't see it happening. And then day later,
sure enough,
visit gets canceled and he goes to Tulane, which what makes way more sense. I know Iowa has better resources than Tulane, but when you think about it, he's going to be the starter at Tulane. Tulane's not a bad program. So it makes more sense than for him to come to Iowa. With that being said, though, I still think we need to go out and find a quarterback because I like Marco, but is he going to be ready? Because once again, dude, I'm sorry. I'm sitting here today on January 7th thinking there is no way Cade lasts an entire year. I hope he does. I pray that he does. But I don't know. I just don't see it. And we got to have someone that can come in. I don't want it this year where like he gets hurt, the season's over. It shouldn't be that way. You should have at least a backup that can come in and be decent. Deacon Hill is obviously not it. So I don't know what we do. We rely on Marco, or do we go out and maybe find another guy? I kind of hope we go out and get another transfer, kind of like I don't think you're going to find someone as good as like maybe Ty Thompson was, but maybe another person. I don't know.
Yeah, we mentioned it. I think a backup quarterback is something that we need to be sort of aggressive in trying to find, right? So for Iowa's, like you said, Iowa's side of things made total sense. Go out and try to get someone that is athletic enough, competent enough, good enough to manage an offense if a guy like Cade goes down. And we've talked about it a million times. The guy's had 2 knee surgeries, one on each knee. He's not reliable in terms of him being healthy, right? And staying healthy for an entire season. We have not seen that in 2-3 years of him playing football. So I agree. I think we need to go out and get somebody because the Deacon Hill experiment again ain't it. So made a lot of sense. Yeah, but for Ty Thompson, it was weird because like I never heard the name. Like before this, I never knew he would take or was thinking about taking a visit. He's a former 5-star guy. Obviously never got really his shot at Oregon. I know he had appeared in a lot of games at Oregon, but he never got, the starting job. And so, obviously he's probably looking to move on. But it was a weird fit, just like scheme wise and everything. I mean, you go from Oregon, their offense to this offense. I mean, and like you said, lack of knowing what's around you really at that point. And then obviously your OC and everything else is still a question. It was weird. I was hoping it was going to be true. That one I never put too much stock into. And sure enough, that thought quickly dissipated as
it was like 24-hour.
Yeah. And I'm sure he got a great NIL deal at Tulane. I mean, I'm sure he did. And obviously he probably will obviously compete for a starting job. I mean, you don't go there not knowing that you're probably going to be the starter. Otherwise, like you said, why wouldn't you stay at Oregon? So, yeah.
For me, what I'm worried about, and this is where we need a quarterbacks coach ASAP, a good quarterbacks coach, is because, and this kind of goes to our last topic of this podcast. Our quarterback room has been absolutely horrendous the last probably ever since like Nate Stanley, right? And
Yeah.
I'm not going to take credit for this. Austin Roberts on Twitter tweeted this out. He listed a bunch of guys the last 4 or 5 years that's been in the quarterback's room, and none of these guys are like at other Power Five schools. Now, Deuce Hogan was the one that went to Kentucky, but he's transferring again, and I'm sure he's probably going to go to a lower school. But you got Joey Labus going to Central Michigan, Deuce Hogan, Kentucky, going to be transferring again, Alex Padilla, SMU, Carson May, Wyoming, Tyler Wiegers, Eastern Michigan, and then Peyton Manziel, Abilene Christian. And if you go and look, their stats, well, a lot of them don't even play. Like Alex Padilla is like third string on SMU. Payne Manziel, I went and looked. So at Abilene Christian in 2020, he had 5 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 1,200 yards. His next year, 1,000 yards, 5 touchdowns, 8 interceptions. Not good. I mean, that's not, those stats are horrible. And you're playing at Abilene Christian. What I'm trying to get at is, number one, we're really bad at recruiting quarterbacks. Okay, and Spencer Petras isn't even on here, but you can include him because he's going to Utah State. That's another non-Power 5 school. And I don't know if you knew this at the time, but when we were recruiting Petras, we were about ready to get Zach Wilson. And once again, he's not good in the NFL, but in college, he was pretty damn good. And we went and we chose Petras over Wilson. And that just kind of goes to show like our recruiting's not very good, number one. But then when they do arrive on campus, our development is horrible. None of these guys ever get better. And, you know, maybe Cade would have changed that if he would have stayed healthy. But once again, we didn't recruit Cade right away out of high school. We didn't develop him. He would have came to Iowa already developed and everything. Everybody else has been horrible the last how many years. And that's where it makes me nervous that if Cade gets hurt, Marco's going to come in. And if we're not good at developing quarterbacks, can we rely on someone like Marco? Now, if we get a quarterbacks coach and a good quarterbacks coach that can really develop some of these guys, then I'm feeling a little bit better. But until then, man, like you see this and it's like an NFL team. You know how some NFL teams can just never get the quarterback situation right. Just never. Yep. This really reminds me of like Iowa, where you're talking 4 or 5 years. You would think one of these guys that we recruited would develop into something. And it's just been bad after bad after bad. And it's not a good trend.
Yeah, it goes to show that I feel like we're bad in both departments of scouting quarterbacks and bringing them in, because clearly they've left and really haven't had success. So they were never, in my opinion, that great to begin with. But then number two, like you said, you know, you're trying to mold them and develop them and fit them into your system, and it doesn't work out. And it goes both ways. I'm not going to say sit up here and you know, essentially trash these guys like and say that they're just so bad. I think some of them could have been okay. Joey Labus, I think, could have been okay if we would have had someone that could act, like you said, actually develop him and make him a better player.
Or actually give him a chance to come out there a couple games when Deacon Hill was struggling. Yeah.
And that goes back to more the larger issue of obviously Kirk and his philosophy, and obviously Brian Ferentz being an former offensive lineman, being our play caller and quarterbacks coach, which we've gotten into and talked about, which we don't need to go down that rabbit hole again. But you're exactly right. We have not gotten it right, and this needs an overhaul. The whole process of recruiting quarterbacks and developing them, clearly it is so bad right now. And you've listed all the guys that have transferred out and have had zero success. Like, we have to, if we're going to really get anywhere and do things, it starts obviously at that quarterback position, and we've got to get better in that department.
Yeah.
Sure. Unless we're going to land transfers every year like Cade, or every 2 years, but we're not banking on that. So
no,
that's not Iowa's way. So we got to figure it out.
Because I think Marco has the tools to be decent, but you got to get someone that can develop him. Yeah. And not only that, but yes, you kind of mentioned like the offense in general. Like, you can't really put all of it on them. I think it's just this offense is just, it's such a bad offense, right? Like, it's such a poor scheme and everything, where sometimes it's almost like, I feel like it's almost impossible for some of these guys to get better in this. But that's why we need a OC pronto. I'm still banking on Paul Chris. I think a lot of Iowa fans are banking on Paul Chris. You would think, I mean, once again, we're recording this on January 7th. You would think probably by next week, I mean, man, you're talking like January 14th, January 15th. You would think by then they would have something figured out. Kirk needs to get on this, because, and I'm not saying Ty Thompson would have came to Iowa, But
Right.
if we had all that figured out, like an OC quarterbacks coach, maybe he
Maybe
would
he
have
doesn't commit
thought,
right away and actually takes
yes.
a visit, you know?
It's just like the entire situation right now is very like, you just don't really know what's going on. Now,
Yeah.
one last thing I will say this, because I forgot to mention this before when we were talking about the guys coming back. And as of right now, knock on wood, we're not really seeing many transfers out. Once again, I want to just speak on the culture of this program, because even though our offense is so bad and we get shit on by outside the national media. I saw Michigan's quarterback was talking yesterday about scouting Washington's a lot funner than when being the scout team quarterback when they play Iowa, like things like that. You know, we get laughed
Yep.
at all the time, and it kind of goes to show how good the culture is to
Yep.
be able to keep some of these players and not have them transfer out, and then also some of these guys that could easily go to the NFL and make money, they're deciding to come back. So that is awesome.
Yep.
I do want to say that. So, and also, shout out to the Swarm NIL, because I think without them, without the Swarm, like we wouldn't be seeing some of these guys back either. I think what Brian
Yeah.
Heinrichs has done, truly unbelievable. Probably still not where it needs to be at. And I know Brad Heinrichs talks about it all the time, our NIL program, but it's still pretty damn good compared to some of
Yeah.
the other teams around us and things like that, and the Big Ten and stuff. So, we hopefully it continues to get better, because that's the only way we're going to
Yeah.
be competitive. I know, you know, when people say that, people might bat an eye and be like, gosh, like, but it's true. Like, we're in the world now where you don't have a good NIL program, you're more than likely going to be left in the dust. So, I do want to make a remark for
Yeah.
that as well. So,
Yeah, I think real quick, I think you're exactly right. I think some of it, maybe the criticism is deserved. I mean, we criticize the offense on here, but at the same time, I've always said it. I'll never deny the fact that players love playing for Coach Ferentz, right? And he
yeah,
loves his players back. You can see that on and off the field, especially when they get a win. You see it in the locker room, and I think a lot of those guys they love him to death, and they'll do anything for him. So the culture. I mean, I'll take that culture over, some of these like NIL deals that these guys are getting, and that's the only
yeah,
reason they're coming there. And
exactly.
it doesn't even end up working out. So a culture like that is always, in my opinion, a better way to go about it anyway. Yeah, for sure. I don't deny that at all.
Before we wrap this up, we are a day before not the Big Ten, the national championship game. And if you're
Yeah.
listening to this tomorrow, it will be the day of. So we're going to give our prediction real quick. Michigan, Washington. I'm really excited about this matchup. It's finally no SEC team. I think it's been since 2015. So I am looking forward to that. And if you think about it, even though Washington's still technically in the Pac-12, I kind of consider them a Big Ten team now, because they are going to be in the Big Ten for this next year. So two Big Ten schools facing off. It's going to be a great game. You got
Yeah.
like a power team kind of going up against a more of a West Coast spread type of team, and it's going to be a really exciting matchup. So I'm curious to hear your prediction here. We'll do this real quick, and then we'll call it a day.
I'll go with the team that's in the Big Ten currently. I'll
Currently.
go with Michigan. Man, I don't know. I feel like it's maybe their year to finally get it done. And I think a lot of those guys are really pulling for Jim Harbaugh, and they're, and there's a lot of noise that maybe he'll leave for the NFL. Who knows what his future holds? But I don't know. I just, something about their physical style of nature that they might be
Yeah.
able to ground and pound and control the game. I'll say that they're going to win the game 24-21. Not going to be as much of a shootout as Washington was in against Texas. There'll be a little bit more defense played. But I think Washington is very capable of staying in the game. I mean, they're receivers. They can score at any moment on the field.
Yep.
And I do think it'll be a really close game. But I'll go Michigan 24-21 just because of their defense.
I'm not saying this just simply to be like opposite of you. It's not like undisputed where like one person has to say the other and then the other person has to say,
Don't
for
bring
like a debate.
Skip into this.
But no, I'm actually going to go with Washington. I'm going to ride with their kind of undervalued. I mean, you look back at like the Oregon game and the Pac-12 championship, they were like 10-point underdogs. And then Texas, same thing, that they weren't quite
Like
10 points, but it was like 4
points,
point, 4.5
yeah.
points. And then now again against Michigan, same thing. And I thought Washington, what really kind of surprised me was, they had to go up against a Texas team, although not as probably physical as Michigan. You talk about a really good defense in Texas, so that defensive line is really good. And I thought Washington did an extremely well job, even against them. And you mentioned their wide receivers, like at any given moment, 50 yard down the field, just like that. So I'm going to go with Washington, and I'm going to go. I don't know how many points they're going to be able to put up against Michigan's defense, but I'm going to go somewhere like in the neighborhood of maybe like 28 to like 24, something like that. Like I think it's going to be a really, really close game. And to me, like I really don't care who wins this game. I'm to the point now where it's like, since they're
I just
both
want a
technically kind of in the Big Ten, like it really doesn't matter to me. I think it would be cool if like Washington won because we're playing them at home next year in Kinnick in October. It's kind of cool, like bringing in like the defending national champions in the Iowa City. But I'm just hoping for a good game.
If they're anything like those semifinals games, I'm not going to complain at all who wins that game for sure. So
also,
I agree. I think it'll be a great game.
Can we make a petition to move the national championship game to like a Saturday 100%. Instead of a Monday night? At like
100%.
Stupid. I
hate
me
on
it.
that rant.
I absolutely hate it. I'm almost
play
positive
college football on Monday night. Why is it on a Monday night? It's so dumb.
I'm almost positive the FCS national championship is on a Saturday, always. So
it might be on a Sunday, but
is it a Sunday? Okay, well, it's on a weekend.
It's on a weekend. Yeah.
So
that, and I believe that the national championship should be like the Rose Bowl going forward. I think we've talked about that maybe, or at least
every year at the Rose Bowl.
Yeah. They brought up they should move up the schedule just a hair and make the national championship in the Rose Bowl on New Year's Day. Yeah. I'd be okay with that too, because obviously it's on a Monday, but
I would take that.
Most people have that off. So
the FCS national championship game is actually today. Speaking of which, so you were right on a Sunday. It's actually today at 1:00. Yeah. So or it's going on right now, I should say.
Okay, there we go. Well,
but I think it needs to be on the weekend, and like the Rose Bowl, but especially bring it on the weekend because like a Monday night just sucks. Like I hate it. And same thing for like the basketball game. The basketball game's on a Monday night too.
Yep.
So why not move the Final Four to Friday night? Most people, Friday night, and then have the national championship game on Sunday. Like, I don't know. I don't get it. Yeah. It's what it is. What it is.
Wild.
It's kind of like the Super Bowl too. I don't mind it being on a Sunday, but it's like I wish that was on like a Saturday as well.
Yeah.
You talk about people wanting to have like Super Bowl parties, and if people have to work the next day, it kind of sucks. I'm not gonna lie, it really does. But
that and just like the event, even whether it's the national championship or the Super Bowl, it's always like 4+ hours, and it
takes forever.
Like 7 o'clock at night. It's like, jeez.
Yep, because like the halftime is way longer than it is. You have all the commercials, things like that. Yeah, it takes way longer than it really needs to be. I mean, fuck, the Rose Bowl was 4 hours, close to 4 hours long. The other night.
No, I know, and I stayed up for that one. I'll admit it was not able to finish the Washington Texas game.
I stayed up for that game. That game didn't get done till like midnight. Yeah. And then I was so like just watching that game because it was a pretty good ending. I was like still kind of juiced up from that game. I could not fall asleep. I did not fall asleep till like 2:00 that morning, and then I had to wake up at 5:36 a.m. for work. So that kind of sucked, but it is what it is. So, well, that will do it for this episode. Thank you guys all for listening. We'll be back. I know we keep saying it, and I think this last one we're like, we'll be back probably in a week or two, and we ended up being back here. So we're kind of going with the flow, with
the news, with what happens in
every news that comes out, things like that. And I really do think the OC will be announced here the next week or two. So we'll definitely have an episode out at that point. So thank you guys all for listening. Have a good rest of your weekend and have a good week ahead, and go Hawks.